We're live, we're live, we're live. Always concerning when you start the live stream and no one's in yet. Just sat there waiting anxiously for people to turn up. But yes, good morning, one and all, to what is a very, very cold morning here in Barnsley. I'm back in sort of my my wintry best. Oh, good morning from the Netherlands. Good morning to you, Marinus. I think that was. Yep, Marinus. Good morning to you. Yep, Emerald. Good morning. And I don't know how you say that, Alexa Matt. Good morning to you as well. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Like I say, it's a very, very cold morning. Oh, good morning. Again from the Bay Area of California, good morning to you. It's probably a lot warmer there. Good morning from Dusseldorf, good morning to you. Someone else from North America, good morning to you. Good morning to Phil. Good morning to Henk. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Greetings from Hanover. You're originally from Sheffield? Well, you're from the... Yeah. I won't hold that against you. Good morning from Leeds. Good morning to you. Again, I won't hold that against you either. We're from Yorkshire. We've got to have this, you know, inter-town rivalry. Well, not only inter-town, inter-city rivalry. Oh, wow, David. Thank you very much for the support there. Hi from Hong Kong. So, wow, thank you very much for that. But yes, welcome one and all to the show that never ends. We've got surprises around the corner and delights that never end. For those of you who might remember that was the, what was it? The Generation game? I think it was Generation game. Opening. But yeah, what have we got to talk about this week? Well, I think before we get into our main issue today, which is talking about Boris and his wallpaper, we're going to talk about the developing trend in Brexit for Britain to this fantastic quote-unquote trading island nation to do something and then absolutely fail at it. Because late on Friday evening, it was confirmed that Liz Truss was going to the WTO, that's the World Trade Organization, and said that she wanted the WTO to enact sweeping reforms, to which no surprise at all. Nobody wants to do those reforms because, not too surprisingly, they are all reforms that would overwhelmingly favour countries like the UK. And guess what? There is no other country like the UK in the world. So unsurprisingly, very unsurprisingly, We haven't heard, I think, at least I don't think we've heard what the official reaction to from the WTHO yet. So we've just got to wait and see what happens there. But ultimately, I highly suspect that at some point this week, we will be bringing you yet another grand failure of the adventures of Liz Truss in her trade adventures. It's becoming like a somewhat really depressing Flash Gordon serial. It really is. Liz Truss, trader of the universe. So we've got the fallout potentially for that to look forward to, essentially coming week. But that's not all that happened this week as well, because as someone's already said, we also tried to negotiate trade, do a trade deal with Norway, over which we were trying to understand and get with Norway. We were trying to essentially sign a rollover deal, which a lot of other countries have signed up to. Not because it's beneficial. Well, it is beneficial to them because it keeps currently for them trade flowing, but all the other countries that have signed up to these deals, mainly a lot in the Caribbean area, Canada's done one, South Korea's done it, and then, of course, not so infamously, Japan had one and then did the trade deal with us, and of course we all know how well that turned out. So we've got some very it was very interesting, shall we say, to see what the reports of this actually was, because this wasn't just a rollover deal. It was far more than that. And Norway even said they rejected it because it was asking for, I'm trying to remember what they said now exactly. They said they were asking for far more than they originally had leverage to ask for, or something like that. I think it was how they put it. But one of the things that the British were demanding, and I say demanding because this is what it literally comes across as, was that they wanted full unrestricted access for all UK agricultural products to Norway. And another thing that Norway said, and went and turned around and said, well, you want this thing, but at the moment you're potentially lined up to do trade deals with other countries, and we're worried about your regulations that will probably end up in a deregulated environment, and we do not want to give you 100% free trade access when potentially your standards and regulations could fall well below ours, and then we end up with very low, substandard, below par products from the UK coming into Norway. We don't want that. So of course they turned around and said no. But of course also in this as well was access to the Norwegian Arctic waters, which has been a fishing ground for centuries, years, and especially if you like fish and chips, because if you've ever had cod, chances are that you've probably had cod from there, because I think it was 10% of all cod that's sold in UK fish and chip shops come from that area of sea. So instantly, you can see how important that really is to, you know, the fishermen of the UK. And of course, to no surprise, because of course the British were basically making ridiculous demands, because again, they see Norway, the Brexiteers see Norway as like this Manchurian state within the EU. They both have praised Norway for years about how it, you know, defies all EU convention and does all this quote unquote fantastic stuff. But at the same time, it's in the EU, or not fully, but you know, it's in the single market, it's in the customs union, and has various agreements with the EU. So Brexiteers love to both praise Norway and at the same time diminish it. So the assumption was, I think the assumption definitely was, because this is another clear example of drinking the Kool-Aid in this, it was, let's go to Norway and do this quote unquote fantastic trade deal. Didn't turn out that way. In fact, from all intents and purposes, Norway has essentially sided with the EU and said that we're not even interested in doing a deal with you at this moment in time. And of course, the results of this was that these fishing grounds were incredibly important to fishing ports like Hull in the north, again not too far from where we are. But they were so important that the jobs there, they're looking at like 100 people out of the job, potentially just in that one area. And I think you would probably see potentially looking at more. Like I say, when the full figures come in, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more. But it gets even more funnier because you have the head of the UK fishing organisation came out and said this was like the worst betrayal the UK fishing industry has ever had, and it was a black day for the fishing industry. And for them to say that in quite some strong words, let's be honest, that's quite strong words from a from like a fishing industry representative, that you get like, well, surely there has to be some sort of repercussions for that. And ultimately, I think there will be. We've seen Cornwall has said that they in this upcoming elections, local elections, are potentially going to rebel against the Conservatives, which again looks quite set to happen. So you could see the Conservative gains there just disappear, and then that'll put a lot of fires under the under the Tories almost immediately. So this is one of those issues that, you know, it's unbelievable to see that we were here. Cast back to December, and you had literally every Conservative on Twitter tweeting about how fishing was so important, and you know, you can't betray the fishing industry. You know, you've got to stick with the fishing industry. Even Nigel Farage, of all people, was tweeting about how important it was, supposedly, for this minor industry, by the way, minor industry that adds something like 0.01% to our GDP, and we're insisting that we should go to the wall for essentially this tiny industry that gives nothing to our GDP in the long run. And essentially, as someone just said there, yeah, the Tories have just sold out British fishermen. And again, it wasn't surprising. It wasn't surprising in the least. Because I've said to you all for a while now, you know, Boris is in a very unusual position where he could essentially, you know, he is the betrayer. And then I don't know if you've saw on James O'Brien's LBC show this week, he took on a former Brexit Party MEP, and this former Brexit Party MEP, prior to obviously 2016, was very, very, very insistent that this was going to be easy, and that we were going to have our full access to our sovereign fish rights and all this. You know, you've heard it all before. Yeah, June Mummery, that was it. So Mummery was absolutely insistent that this was going to be like game, set and match to the UK. That no matter what happened, the, you know, Europe would have to acquiesce. And here she was on James O'Brien's show, crying about how much Boris had betrayed her. Not only that, it's once again the classic, you know, the classic example of, one, Brexiteers do not understand how the EU worked, and two, the Brexiteers love to be not only the betrayers, but the betrayees, because they love to play that victim card. Because, like I say, they made an entire, you know, Nigel Farage being a prime example, made an entire almost cottage industry out of essentially selling the whole victim complex for the EU. And of course, the big answer was, where was Nigel? Where was Nigel? And the answer was, well, apparently he was, you know, man of the people. Oh, good morning to all the other people that are joining us. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So where was Nigel in all this? Because you'd think Nigel Farage, man of the people, would be standing up for the fishermen. Oh, someone from Texas joining us. Good morning. Mitch, I think that was. Good morning. Oh, good morning to... Oh, missed that there. So it was absolutely crazy. And yet he's been over in America with a group called Freedom Works. Now, I'm pretty sure if you looked into Freedom Works, you would probably find an absolute ton of stuff about them and the crazy stuff that they peddle. I have no doubt about that. But he's been paid by them to essentially try and do his victory lap tour. And I still think we need to do a live stream on that, because that full article is just absolutely crazy. But if anyone sees out there a video of Nigel Farage doing his tour, please, by all means, do let me know, because I think that's one video I would love to cover. Because in his article that he wrote about it, he was already trying to alter history and change events, saying that stuff did and didn't happen. So it's absolutely crazy that this is where we got to. And then, don't worry, we're gonna get to Boris and his wallpaper soon. But like I say, the Brexit train just can't stop crashing. It's just forever off the rails. So, and then, much to no one's surprise, because as we just said there, the Brexiteers and Boris love to be not only the betrayers, but the betrayees as well. And I think Arlene Foster will go down in history as being not only the biggest fool in politics, but ultimately the saga of betrayals and hardships that, you know, the DUP brought on this country. Like I say, it's going to be, I think, one of the key, and she will be during that, you know, that 2016 to 2019 period. You know, what I think a lot of people are dubbing the 4 years of, what a lot of people are dubbing as the 4 years of chaos. If they're not, I'm dubbing it. And this chaos was almost primarily sorted out by her. Because remember, it was her DUP that propped up Theresa May. And it was ultimately the DUP who were then started drinking the Brexit Kool-Aid. Oh, there we go. The Brexit Kool-Aid provided to them by the hard Brexiteers that then brought them into the position where we are. Because you've got to think, 2017 election, Theresa May loses her majority and gets the DUP and bungs them a load of cash to essentially prop up her government. That's the first thing. You know, prop up our government, will quote unquote get Brexit done, and things will be fine. Now, initially, as lots of people have said, there really is a massive game to be played by basically saying, look, if the Brexiteers really wanted their exit from the EU as quickly as they claim to want it, then they should have supported Theresa May's deal. But this wasn't the Brexit they wanted. It was also not the Brexit that was sold to the British people by the Leave campaign. Because no one in the Leave campaign ever talked about all the hard Brexit that they have implemented. And that was essentially up primarily to the DUP, and the ERG cozied up to the DUP, put their arm around them and say, "Don't worry, my friend, we'll never betray you." And I think it was Jacob Rees-Mogg that said they would never abandon Northern Ireland. There's obviously Boris Johnson said that no British Prime Minister could ever countenance a border in the Irish Sea. So we have a very, very clear track of just what fools the DUP were made into. And they were made into the willing accomplices of the ERG and the hard Brexiteers who now sit in power. And the DUP were used essentially as, I'm just trying to think now, what is it? The murder of Julius Caesar, who was there was obviously Brutus, which were the ERG, but I can't remember who was the second. I can't remember if it was Marius or something else like that. And they were brought on and egged on constantly by the ERG to come with them, and then to eventually stab and betray Theresa May. And then they used that to essentially assume power and ultimately betray the ERG. Not the ERG, the DUP. So, I don't know if you can hear them. There's a lot of geese crying out like crazy. But that's what happened. They were treated, as fellow buddies. And then ultimately, even now, the DUP said, "Thank you, Arlene, but we're done with you. You've led this party and their nation into a disaster that no DUP leader should ever be taken into." And shockingly enough, the DUP have never, ever done this to any of their other leaders. So Arlene Foster will also go down in history as, at the moment, the only DUP leader to ever have a vote of no confidence in her. And yet, will be, when historians look back at this, those particular 4 years of history and to the rise of Boris and the start of Brexit, ultimately, Arlene Foster will probably have, well, not only Arlene Foster and the DUP will probably have an entire chapter to themselves, because ultimately they are so important to this story. And not only were they, they started off as staunch supporters of the then Theresa May, who then flipped to her ardent hello. Just some Dalmatian fun for you there, because unfortunately the ponies aren't out today. So unfortunately no ponies today. I know. I know that's why a lot of you come. But they will go down in history as one of the major players in that period of time. There's, you know, they have their position cemented there of being the proppers, the instigators, and then betrayers. And ultimately, that's what happened. It was a sad fate of the DUP to be essentially used by the hard Brexiteers to essentially bring to power Boris Johnson. I think that's a perfect segue into our main topic today. So, last Sunday, seemingly out of nowhere, Dominic Cummings and his blog became the must-read item of the week, because Dominic Cummings went around saying, hey, there's some dodgy stuff going on here. There's some dodgy stuff. And ultimately this has surfaced really into two big cronyism scandals, continuing on from the previous week of the David Cameron Greensill scandal and his lobbying accusations. Well, now this week, it turns out, not only essentially did Boris Johnson decide that he was going to essentially buddy up to James Dyson, of all people. You know, I'm surprised that more right-wing press have not attacked James Dyson on this, because imagine this. James Dyson during the referendum was positioned as like one of the key, you know, industry leaders to back Brexit. You know, he made speeches about how important UK manufacturing was, and then almost immediately has shipped up and moved off to Singapore. Not surprisingly. You know, so much for UK manufacturing, and saying how wonderful it would be for UK manufacturing to be outside of the EU. Again, not turning out. So plum for him. And I'm surprised about the fact of him being built up as like a massive patriot, that the scandal also hasn't touched him as much as well, especially by the right-wing press, because in his Boris text, he said he's only going to sell the UK ventilators if Boris sorted his tax issues for him. Yeah, I'm quite shocked that this hasn't resulted in a furore against James Dyson as well. But we now see that. Oh, yep. So we now see that one of the things that we have been constantly talking about throughout all the pandemic of this cronyism and this VIP lane that exists for those with money, and how it essentially screwed up our response to the pandemic. And it's even more important now that we get an immediate start to the coronavirus inquiry sooner rather than later, because of course the Tories are using that old excuse of, oh, it's too soon to have an inquiry. And of course, after all this, they'll be saying, oh no, it's too late to have an inquiry now, we can't have an inquiry now. So I urge you, if you are in the UK, do write to your MP and say that you should be demanding that that Parliament launches an immediate investigation into the coronavirus, just what went wrong, and exploring all angles of this. Because the Good Law Project, again, they've been doing some fantastic sterling work throughout this. Oh, pardon me. They uncovered emails that basically showed that civil service agents were ready to buy ventilators and PPE, and then were stopped at the 11th hour from buying from particular companies, and then were told they had to buy from specific other companies. So this delayed the delivery of ventilators and PPE to our frontline staff on the NHS. So that whole thing of Boris saying he'll fix Dyson's tax issues to send ventilators suddenly becomes, and should be, a major issue. Because how much quicker could we have had ventilators and personal protective equipment if, the civil service was allowed to do their job and get on with the job of purchasing this stuff? So that will almost certainly be a key point in the inquiry. But that wasn't the only thing that obviously came to light this week. Because it had come to light that essentially Boris Johnson's Downing Street flat had essentially been renovated with a very somewhat mysterious gift of, 58, I want to say 58, I can't say it now. Was it 58 or was it £50,000 or something like that? £54,000 in just this absolutely crazy way, and then gets even better, because the Conservative Party also at that time, around 56,000. So yeah. It's somewhere around there, but again, that's still a lot of money. It's still a lot of money. Yeah, and as someone said there, do go and support the Good Law Project, by the way. They are doing absolutely sterling work in all this. So, after the stream, do go give them a look and check out. And like I say, do follow them on. I think their main thing for them is Twitter, because then you'll get updates about their ongoing cases and the campaigns that they're running. They are a fantastic organisation to support. And like I say, during especially this time with Boris and his majority, them holding the government to account through law is an amazing way to keep them accountable to this. So essentially around that time, there was a donation of precisely that amount to the Conservative Party by a big political donor. Now, at the moment, I'm not 100% sure, but I think so far that donor is still unknown. And the question is being asked and needs to be found out, because this is what resulted in essentially Boris's breakdown in the in Prime Minister's question time this week. Was we need to know who paid for Boris Johnson's flat. And we're not just saying initially who paid for Boris Johnson's flat, because that's the big thing. Because it looks like that essentially someone else stumped up the money to pay for Boris's flat. And it's kind of strange when you think about it that Boris ran his entire 2019 election campaign as being the outsider, the political outsider, and that it was, we the people versus Parliament. And as a lot of people said at that time, sooner or later, you become Parliament. And lo and behold, Boris is now Parliament with a massive majority, over which the evidence of his lack of trust and training and just general ability to be able to tell the truth is just not there. We had an ex-former cabinet minister come out, must have been a week or 2 weeks ago now, and basically say, no one tells the truth in the cabinet. If that's the case, how on earth does Boris Johnson's cabinet actually function? I don't see how it can work. And then, of course, we have now had Boris's, shall we say, comments to let the bodies pile high, of to which numerous people have come forward and have confirmed that yes, they heard Boris say that, and I think according to, ITV's Preston something or other, I can't remember his first name, has come out and said that there may be a recording of him saying that. And it's quite interesting because obviously as part of Boris's meltdown on Wednesday, he said that these people should come forward. Well, these people were willing to come forward under oath to swear that they had heard Boris Johnson say that. And when you get to that point, you've got to wonder, how on earth does Boris survive this? Because I know to a lot of people it seems like Boris is coated in a Teflon-proof, scandal protection. But even that can't survive too long. from all these things that have come up. And it is so important, so important that we keep up this momentum, because I guarantee you, more stuff will come out. You know, I said it last week, there will probably be another Tory scandal. And lo and behold, we've had 3 big scandals surrounding Boris, and you've got to wonder how he survives. You've really got to wonder how he survives this, because I know Boris is, again, like I say, he's known to be quite invincible, but the big question is how much does this permeate to the public at large? And like I say, Labour has an absolute golden opportunity here. Golden opportunity to turn the tables. We've talked about before about how Labour can put forward new, really tough anti-corruption legislation in Parliament. And that would be a massive vote winner. But they also need to start calling them out for the elitism that they are expressing. Because Boris Johnson has exhibited something that we all know to be true. If you can't afford it, then you don't get it. You just don't get it, essentially. No matter what it is, no matter how much you want it. But Boris and the elites up there have always had everything they've ever wanted served to them directly on a silver platter. And that is what this whole, you know, the Boris flat or Boris Gate or Wallpaper Gate or, you know, the wallpaper scandal, whatever you want to call it, comes down to. Boris Johnson used his position of absolute privilege and elitism to go out and purchase something that normally you and I would not be able to afford. And that's essentially what happened. And ultimately, these are going to roll on and on. And what's even worse is that Boris now gets the final say over how the investigation to his flat gets conducted. If there even is one. Which should be shocking people a whole lot more than it is. And I think we're going to see even more stuff come out this week. I can't see how more stuff doesn't come out this week, or if there aren't consequences, because obviously we've got the local elections coming up. We're going to have to see how that impacts things, because if the Conservatives then think that Boris and his scandals are too much of a liability, well, then they'll get rid of Boris. And then ultimately, as Theresa May was the sacrificial lamb for Brexit, so too will Boris. The problems of Boris's deal won't be blamed on the fact of it was just physically impossible, and that, look, these are the rules. You now have to play by these new rules, which we have now essentially voted into following. You know, it will just be an extra someone else for the Brexiteers to blame. So there you have it. There you have it. Like I say, I guarantee you next week we'll be talking more about Boris and his new scandal that's emerged. Yeah, of course, Carrie Antoinette. That was the other thing that's emerged as well. That was quite funny on Twitter. But yes, thank you everyone. Once again, we're coming up to the end of our good morning walk. So absolutely thank you so much for everyone for joining me this morning. Please do remember to hit that like button on your way out. It does help out the channel. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, have an absolutely fantastic bank holiday weekend, as best as you possibly can have. Like I say, I'm not sure how the weather for this particular bank holiday is going to be, but nevertheless, it should be quite good. So go out and enjoy yourselves. As for Jeff Taylor, my test, if you haven't seen it, went very well this week. So hopefully, I'm thinking I'll probably announce it later on, but I think on Wednesday is when we will have our Jeff sessions. Oh, thank you very much, Henk. Thank you very much for the support there. But yes, I will let you know. But I think it's going to be Wednesday evening, I think. It just depends. I would have done it on Monday, but on Monday I'm playing D&D. So, like I say, thank you everyone for joining me today. Like I say, please do remember to hit that like button on your way out. Thank you all for joining me on another fantastic good morning walk. Like I say, if you are new, please do hit that subscribe button to subscribe to the channel to see more videos covering the absolute craziness. Oh, hang on. We've got some ponies for you because some of you have missed out on the ponies. Ta-da! You might be late, but at least you get to see the ponies. There you go. So yeah, absolutely thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been absolutely fantastic walk today. Thank you so much for joining me as usual. And as always, if you can't be safe, be sensible. And of course, we'll see you all next Saturday for another good morning walk.